Hi Marta, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I wonder first if you could just introduce yourself and just a little bit about the context that you work within.
Yeah, sure. My name's Marta. I work as a family support worker at St Mary's Primary School in Lewisham, which is based on the High Street in Lewisham. So we have a fairly diverse mix of families that are attending our school. We come within the highly deprived index, and our free school meal rate is about 45%, so it's quite high. And there is a high level of demand in terms of SEN and English as an additional language. So very diverse, probably very typical of many London borough schools.
Absolutely, thank you. And we're talking today about free school meals. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience of applying for free school meals? So what did it involve in terms of that application?
So we're talking about free school meals for NRPF families. Yeah. So that sort of is slightly different to the normal procedure where the office would deal with free school meal applications with parents. So it sort of came to fall on my plate a little bit as a family support worker, because I knew lots of those families that might have been struggling or might have already disclosed that they were NRPF. And when the amendment came into force during COVID, and we became aware of this ability to apply for free school meals, I was able to approach the families that I knew already directly to say, listen, we've got this great opportunity to apply for, for your son or daughter to get free school meals. And the response was pretty much overwhelmingly, wow, that's amazing, and they were really happy to kind of respond to that and sort of provide the documentation. So that was sort of during COVID. And then what we've tried to do since COVID and since the provision was made permanent is to really just try and put the word out there, and it goes out with lots of newsletters and meetings and initial correspondence with families, so that we try to get the message out there to everybody that this is available to all families, NRPF or undocumented. So that was really how it sort of started during COVID and has kind of progressed now it's become permanent, really.
Excellent. And in terms of the actual application process for you as a school, is there any support that's been particularly helpful for you? How's the sort of actual application process been?
It's been fairly good, actually, from our perspective. We managed to create a sort of relationship with the pupil support department in Lewisham, and they seemed to be on it quite early on as well, and to understand, and they provided us with the form that they wanted us to complete. So we were able to kind of work in unison with them, which was quite helpful, because I know other schools have had some difficulties finding the right person to speak to in the borough, or what form should they use. And the other really useful, now sort of post amendment, the Children's Society website has a fantastic set of guides and pro formas for schools really to use. So letters to send out to families, information to give to staff within the school. So there's a really useful website there to kind of go to as a one-stop shop, really, for the information about entitlement and how to practically go through the process. So it's not something that we're kind of doing every day. So often I have to go back to it as well and, kind of remind myself about how it works. So that's my kind of go-to there, really. So I would say the website, and I would say just trying to work out who the person in the borough is that's dealing with those forms, so that you can have a conversation with them about, how it works for them and what it is they want from you, so that you can have a flow of conversation, really. Because I think if you're just whacking off forms left, right and centre, you might have some difficulties.
Fantastic. So we will post the Children's Society web link also against.
Yeah, that would be great. Really useful.
Is there anything, you said it's key to find that person in the local authority who's responsible. Is there anything else that you found difficult about the process?
I think it was trying to get, first of all, I suppose it was trying to get office staff to understand the provision, so that they weren't turning people away at the office, basically. So it was trying to educate the whole school, and so being part of the campaign was very helpful, because we were up to date with all the latest developments. So it's trying to educate the office staff primarily, the senior management team, because they will often, or the inclusion teams, who will know those families that are probably coming under that banner and that are struggling. So it's really spreading the word and trying to make sure everybody's singing from the same song sheet, really, so that we can give out the same information. Your question was, did we find anything difficult? I suppose the difficulty is really amongst families that are very suspicious around, first of all, disclosing their immigration status, which is a huge trust element really that comes into it. So, you know, that's really tough for families to disclose, and some won't. There are many, in fact, even through this process, some came out of the woodwork that we didn't even know about before, but there are still some that we don't even know about, I'm sure. So it's a difficult one, and you have to work on the wider strategy within schools of having that conversation around immigration awareness, really raising the language and the culture that it's okay to talk about NRPF, it's okay to talk about being undocumented, you know, and we ought to all be learning the language around it so that we can use it well and confidently, and not so that it's not a hush-hush subject. Otherwise, you know, it's very difficult to kind of penetrate that trust that they're very worried about disclosing.
So making that a sort of wider culture of this.
Yeah, it's a bit more of a strategic thing that you have to work, and many schools are doing that already. So, you know, for example, we're a sanctuary school, and lots of schools are doing lots of stuff for Refugee Week, and there's, you know, schools are really good at knowing their families, but there's always more work to be done around the immigration issue, and really, you know, trying to make that a subject that you can talk about in school. Families are very suspicious of the council, they're very suspicious of the Home Office, but school is a place of trust and understanding. And I think if we can kind of build on that and make it safe for them to come and disclose, then they're more likely to tell you that they're NRPF, and then you can signpost them to the free school meal elements. So it's a bit of a kind of drop down process, really. It's not just, oh, you know, there's this new provision available that you can go for. It's very much a kind of building from the top down, the bottom up. Yeah.
And I mean, you've mentioned quite a lot already in terms of sort of resources and advice that you'd give to other school communities. Is there anything else you haven't mentioned that you would say, you know, this was a really key thing that we learned having gone through the process, that you would want to share with them?
I think it's about knowing your families very well. It's about being very clear that you're not going to be using the information for any other purpose, and that it's safe for them to disclose that, because part of the requirement is that they have to disclose bank accounts, statement, or their immigration documents. So that's it's a big ask of families. So I think sort of reassurance was very helpful. And if they can come through somebody that they know and trust within school, so maybe not just presuming that they can go through the front office, but maybe someone like myself who's in a family supporting role, or someone's who pastoral care, or maybe one of the senior leadership team, just to kind of deal with those very sensitive documents that they need to be very careful about. So I think that was something that helped us along our way, really. And it's just trying to kind of keep up to date with developments and any literature that you can hand out to families. And it's about constantly doing it. So I think that we found initially, we thought we had advertised it really well and, you know, put the word out there. But actually, when you spoke to other families when they came later, perhaps in the year, and they knew nothing about it, and I was really surprised that, oh, you didn't spot my poster, or you didn't get the leaflet, and, you know, life's busy. They didn't. So it's a reminder to keep putting that information out there in whatever format, you know, tweets, website, information, correspondence, any letters that you're sending out, really, so everybody knows that they can apply for it.
And I imagine a lot of your families may not have English as their first language. How have you found it in terms of getting that information out when English won't be their first language?
Well, yeah, and I think that was the realization when we had those conversations with families later on. Well, they didn't really understand what that was all about. So I think we've been much more conscious of, with initial meetings with families, having someone who's translating there, or having a translator. So we're actually raising the issues of free school meals much earlier on, so that we can raise that with them, and so they fully understand and can ask questions about it. So it is a matter of choice for families. So it's a question of asking. The other issue that we've actually got now, which is coming up in the next year, is that Lewisham as a borough, and I know Southwark as well as a borough, are now going to be offering free school meals from reception all the way to year 6. So this is going to become an even harder. So although every family will get free school meals, which is great, including NRPF and undocumented, one of the biggest advantages for schools in getting free school meals is the pupil premium. So that financially for schools will be a massive loss unless we can kind of get the information out there and ask them to make those applications. So in a sense, the incentive has gone because their child will be getting free school meals, but the more important amount of money that we get for pupil premium, which is, you know, 1,200, is much more valuable to the school to help those particular children. But we need to ask those families now to make those applications, despite the fact that their children are going to get a free school meal from the council. So it's a kind of another hurdle that's been put in schools' ways.
Yeah, and I know in, so coming from London Diocese, you know, the Mayor of London's announced a provision for primary school across London. So we've got that right now, but we know that, well, at the moment, that's, you know, only a year's provision of funding. So it's encouraging families to apply again so that they can have that continued provision and pupil premium. So yeah, I hear where you're coming from on that one. And would you say, in terms of the benefit of the school, you've talked about the benefit of accessing pupil premium, are there any other benefits that you have experienced as a school in terms of applying from this, apart from actually feeding the children, which is, you know, obviously the most important thing?
It's a major point. And that feeling of, you know, a few of the children from NRPF families, when they've got their free school meals, the kind of looks on their faces, the mums have explained that they've been so delighted that they've got the choice. So they might still have a packed lunch, but they've got the choice. And they're kind of, you know, they're on an equal level and equal footing with their classmates, which they weren't previously. And that was quite divisive. And we didn't really realise the extent of that really until the children started to talk about, you know, the relief that they could start having free school meals, that they could join their mates and do that. So that is lovely, and that's really great. And I think the other benefit to schools really is just, again, it's just becoming that place of trust and of being able to actually offer your families something. So you've been able to help them to get another step along the way to being a bit more financially secure and to having a bit less to worry about really. So it's kind of built the trust. So, you know, I've had a lot more sort of engagement from those families since we did that. There was a sort of realization of, oh, you know, okay, you are trying to help us, and that's really has helped. So it's been really lovely to have those families on board and kind of, you know, happy to be engaging more with the school, which obviously benefits children's learning and you know, well-being generally.
And I mean, in terms of our church communities as well, do you see that there is a helpful role that they can play in this process? And if so, what might that look like?
Yeah, because I think churches are very often involved quite closely with the families and supportive of them. And if they're running food banks or clubs or social events, they often get to know those families often before the schools do, because the families have disclosed. Again, is another place of trust when they go to church. So I think, again, that sense of the link between church and school is quite helpful. So we did have one of the pastoral team from the church come over and mentioned to us about this family that were in need, and was there anything we could do. And just because they already knew the family, we were then able to kind of, you know, turn our eyes to them and call them in for a meeting, and then discover that they were NRPF, because it's not something that's always disclosed at a first meeting at school, or is necessarily disclosed at all over their period of time in school. So church played a role in highlighting that for us and in kind of giving us the opportunity to open up the conversation with that family around getting a free school meal. So yes, church, you know, because it's just another trustworthy place that knows the families and can, you know, signpost them really.
Absolutely. And just finally, is there anything that you think I've missed that you think would be important to mention on this subject?
I don't think so. I think we've covered quite a lot. I think, yeah, it's just about getting the message out there. It's about encouraging schools to take advantage of that pupil premium thing, which for us, again, we were able to get, approximately 10 families within a couple of years, which was effectively over £10,000 worth for the school, which is, a big figure and allows us to do all sorts of things with that pupil premium. So I'm sure schools are, very keen to take up any opportunity to get that extra funding and that opportunity to provide, wider services to children. So that is the biggest incentive for schools. But, it does take a continuous sort of look at advertising, at strategizing what it is you're going to be doing as a school, and at kind of keeping everybody informed. Even changes of staff, I realised as well, you need to just kind of remind them about this because you sort of presume everybody knows about it because you might be working in that area, but actually somebody who's working at the reception desk in the front office may not know about that and might be the key person to have that conversation with the parent, in the office. So important just to try and update people as they arrive in school, really, and as they continue through the school.
Fantastic. There's so much helpful advice there. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I know obviously school context law is incredibly busy, so we really appreciate your time with us. So thank you.